3PNR with Adam R. Welcome to 3PNR. Joining me for this episode is John Olsen. He's an author and a researcher of the paranormal. John, how you doing, sir?
I'm doing great. Thanks so much for having me on.
Thanks for being here. I'm glad to have your time. Let's for those that aren't familiar, because you were on before, just discuss who you are, your background, and what put you on the path for paranormal.
So I grew up in northern Utah. It's actually where I still live. When I was younger, I grew up in a house that was built in 1883. And so it's a really old farmhouse that had been updated a little bit by my parents. But as I grew up, I realized, things were going on in my house that didn't happen at my friend's house. And there were, heavy footsteps. There were voices coming from other rooms and just a lot of strange things. And I realized, that my house was haunted. And it got me really interested in the paranormal, especially when I was younger, and my parents didn't let us talk a lot about it because they were afraid people would think we were weird if we said our house was haunted. So I kind of delved into books and TV shows and whatever I could to learn everything I could about the paranormal. And as I got older, by the time I was in high school, I started telling my story to people, and people started coming to me with their stories, and I started researching and gathering my own stories. So I've been doing that for years and years, interviewing people and getting their paranormal stories. And about 6 years ago, I started writing books and telling those stories. And since then, it's kind of expanded from northern Utah, where it started, to all over the United States and North America. My last couple books, my last one just came out about a week ago, Stranger Paranormal, and that's book 6 in the series. And it's just delved into all kinds of aspects of the paranormal, from ghosts and UFOs to Bigfoot, cryptids, and glitches in the Matrix. I cover it all, just depending upon who I've interviewed and their stories. And so that's kind of how I got started and where I am today.
Yeah, the more I look into the paranormal and ufology, and I was talking about this with Margie Kay in my last episode. UFOs, when they come to our planet, right, they're obviously utilizing some sort of technology that's manipulating the space-time around them, is what we're gathering anyway. And maybe unknowingly, they're altering something in Earth's atmosphere, or in, opening portals unknowingly. And that's where we're getting a lot of the paranormal events from, or maybe they're opening doorways between here and another side. I mean, there's a lot of speculation to be had. As I learn more, I start hearing these parallels and patterns, and I start to wonder if there's a cause and an effect at play. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I do. Yeah, it makes me wonder too, like how it's all connected, because it does feel that way in a lot of ways, that a lot of the paranormal is connected. But as we do research and figure out and try and find out, and it just opens up more doors, and it's really fun for me. I mean, I just get a kick out of trying to figure it out and hearing all these different stories. And like you say, whether it's UFOs or Bigfoot or ghosts,
Right.
How is everything connected? And it's just fascinating.
Yeah, like it makes me wonder, are something is causing these anomalies to take place. I mean, it's due to history of time. From what I'm reading, mankind has always looked to the stars. We're always talking about some form of gods that come down in what perceived in fiery chariots and or metallic spheres, but we call them angels or different titles over the years. But are they responsible for the paranormal activity? Are they opening these parallels? Are they manipulating the atmosphere around us? It's a strange thing, John. It's got me in a new position of thinking.
Yeah, I totally agree. And, a lot of times when I talk to people, at least, at the beginning, because of where I live, the outdoors is such a big thing here in northern Utah. No matter where you live up here, you're only 10 minutes from the mountains and everything. And I've interviewed a lot of people who have had extremely strange things happen to them in the wilderness. And, you wonder if it doesn't have something to do with, like you say, portals or, dimension hopping or, is it random, or is there something controlling these, these weird anomalies that are happening? And you just wonder who's all in charge of it, I guess you could say. And
right, there's got to be an origin somehow, point of origin, easily.
Right. At least one. Maybe there's several. Who knows? But yeah, there's got to be something going on. Definitely with the sightings of portals and creatures and just the strange things that are going on.
Yeah, it makes you so the human. Here's how I perceive things. This is my personal way of thinking. I think our body obviously is like an avatar system, right? There's a source where our energy comes from. It's downloaded to this body when we're in conception, and when we pass from here, our body goes either to the source or to a new plane of existence. And somewhere in history, something bridged the gap between these planes of existence. And I fully believe it might be the responsibility of the UFOs. I mean, when you consider, again, their technology and how they perform, and if they are traveling the vastness of space, and or even if it's just portals, one way or the other, they're manipulating something at a higher rate. And I think it's altering the space-time around us. Which is because, like, Bigfoot itself, that's one of the harder subjects for me to subscribe to, right? But I can't, until I'm one of these people, until I can go out there and prove either it's real or not, I can't form a solid opinion. But it so happens to be that places where there's high activity of ufology, it would appear that that's where Bigfoot lingers mostly. And maybe, so are they opening a plane of existence between, keep in mind, it's time, space. When they open these portals, what is it, Gigantopithecus is the, maybe they're opening a portal through time, and that thing's walking through it, in and out. Because when they use the portal to come here, is it possible that these things are walking through that very portal, and they're not supposed to be here? You know what I mean?
Yeah, exactly. I totally get what you're saying about that. And, I've often wondered, I interviewed this couple. It was in, I can't remember, my first or second book. And they both worked graveyard. So, and they were in college. So they would do, a lot of their stuff at night when they had the night off together to stay on the same, graveyard shift. So they didn't have to go back and forth. And they would go on walks at night, when everybody else is asleep.
Right.
Well, they came across walking by this park. This was in Logan, Utah, up here, and came across a scout in an old scout uniform by a fire, and they walked by, and this scout seemed to be just as shocked at seeing them as them seeing him. And they walked on. We kind of waved at him and walked on and thought, well, that's really weird. Why is the scout having a campfire right here in the middle of, downtown? And they went back, but he was gone. The fire was gone. And, there was no trace of it.
Yeah.
And going back, they actually used to do scout camps at that site way back when scouting very, started. But when, he talked about this little scout seeming to be as shocked as they were, I wonder, they were thinking it was a ghost. And I was almost wondering if somehow there was an opening or a portal they were seeing through time, both of them.
Right.
He was seeing from his point of view, they were seeing from their point of view, and it was extremely strange to both of them.
I say that often. I mean, we go to houses that are haunted, and for us, it's an anomaly. It's a mystery, right? And we're in there. We're using I'm not going to say sophisticated. We're using equipment to detect these entities. We're calling. We're like, hey, are you here? And meanwhile, how do we know that it's a parallel existence? We're not haunting them.
Right. Right. That's very well, it very well could be more of a time dilation thing than necessarily
a window, a window for time.
Yeah. A window in time. Yep. And, it's funny you mentioned that, because in my new book, I interviewed a gentleman, and him and his buddy were hunting, and it was raining and really cloudy where they were hunting, but they were on top of this mountain where they normally could see the town they lived and the highway and stuff below them. And all of a sudden there was an opening in the cloud, and he's got his binoculars, and he looks expecting to see the town, but instead he sees a homestead with a fire and some cattle and just trail, and then far off in the distance, some sort of camp. And he's kind of like, oh, did I go the wrong place? Am I not where I'm supposed to be? And then the cloud goes by, and it was a strange cloud too. But when it opens up again, there he can see the city like normal, the town that he, lives in, and everything's back to normal. And so, again, did he happen to wander by one of these, windows in time that we were talking about, and get to see the past himself? So,
yeah, I mean, electricity in clouds and magnetics, and there's a lot of factors. Like even at Skinwalker Ranch, they're starting to discover there's like running water beneath the surface, and then there's a magnetic presence there. And so, there's experiments, and I just spoke about this, where you get spoons and some batteries and put a piece of metal in the middle, and it reacts. It's the power of magnetism and electricity. So at higher scales, we don't know what the outcomes of that. In recent times, we learned that MRI, if you get an MRI, it alters your DNA a little bit every time.
Yeah.
And so, and that's at a small scale just for imaging. Imagine when you put like these experiments we're running around the world, these particle colliders. Who knows what we're doing? Large facilities for electricity. Granted, it's controlled and it's putting energy to our homes, but we don't know what it's doing to the space time around it. There's a lot to think about, and especially with the paranormal and the energy of a human or any living thing for that matter, when it does cross to the other side or go either to a source or another plane, it's still energy at the end of the day. It's still detectable, Yeah. So for you, let's talk about some of the experiences that you've investigated or been a part of, and what you gathered from it. Anyhow, what you think of the paranormal.
Well, I can tell from my personal experience, growing up in that home that was old, and the ghosts that were in there. And my parents still live there. And oddly enough, I just recently bought a home and moved back away from that area to another town. But for about 2 years, my wife and I moved closer to my parents. They were having some health issues. So we were in that house again for 2 years, like every day, helping my parents. And in that time, we had new experiences. One morning, my wife went in and was talking to my parents and went to go upstairs to check on something. And she saw a hand that was around the corner, a man's hand with a white shirt, and it just slid around the corner. And she went up, and there's obviously nobody upstairs. And so I had an experience where I was cleaning the basement for my parents. And all of a sudden something hit me on the top of the head, and I looked up, and we have in the basement right there, we have a lot of our fishing poles that are up there in the rafters. And one of them had been pulled down to hit me on the head and was back in place and wiggling. And so it's still active there, the house that my parents live in. But when I've done research and looked into the history of the house, and I saw a couple times we've seen the ghost himself. One of them anyway. He's a tall, skinny gentleman that wears a white shirt, overalls, and a wide brimmed hat. And when my grandmother, who lived a block away from us, when she passed away and we were going through the house and helping clean up, I came across an old family album. And as I was flipping through, there's the house that I grew up in, picture from the 1920s. And there's a gentleman standing in the front, and he's got a white shirt, overalls, skinny, tall guy with a wide brimmed hat. And I about fell out of the chair when I saw him. Huh. But it turned out to be a great, great uncle of mine that owned the house at the time. So, through all of these experiences that I had personally, I believe that it is some family members that used to own the house from way back when. And it's never been really evil or anything like that. It has definitely been mischievous, but never felt really evil or mean or anything like that.
Sounds like it's bored.
Yeah.
I mean, picture this. If you're here, your residual energy's here. You didn't go to the next level or back to the source. And you're in a home where no one can really see you or speak with you. you're going to manipulate it. You're desperate. You want interaction, and you're going to manipulate energy any way you see fit to do it.
Right.
I mean, I would.
Yeah, I would too. So
yeah, I'm a jerk, man. I tell my family a lot. You better hope I don't stick around. It's not good. You know?
That's funny. Yeah, and you can only imagine, all of us that are studying and doing everything we can with the paranormal, what wonders await us on the other side, and what we'll be able to finally learn or do when we get over there. But
yeah, I mean, I told a lot of people I've never witnessed anything at all. Nothing. I mean, I'm interested in the subject. I know to a certainty there's stuff out there. Prior to podcast, I didn't believe in ghosts and afterlife. I thought when you died, the lights turn off, game over. But when you spend hours doing research and you read case study and not just from, individual researchers, the government's looked into this. I noticed to a certainty. I've read the documents on it.
Right.
They've even gone as far as remote viewing was a thing with the CIA. That's a fact. Experiments with humans for psychedelics from the CIA. Fact. The idea to utilize something that's no longer present in this world, like so their reasoning to discover paranormal is not to set man's mind at ease. It's a spy technique.
Right. It's to weaponize. I mean, whatever it is, it seems they want to weaponize whatever they find. But I totally agree. And so I'm really kind of in the same boat with you when it comes to Bigfoot. I have never actually physically seen one, but yet I've interviewed so many people who have that, I know there's got to be something to it. Whether it's, half, real and spiritual creature like the Native Americans talk about, whether it's an alien visiting, whatever it is that's making it disappear and be able to not be found. I don't know what it is, but I think there's something to it. So that's kind of how I come across when it comes to Sasquatch.
There's a couple things too. Because I used to say as a kid, like, why I never found a body? That's got to be horse shit. And then it turns out, like most predators, you don't find their carcass when they perish. They go dive mysteriously somewhere, and it's like super rare to come across a bear carcass, and that's a large animal, or even in the in Africa, like the lions. It's very rare to find lions and tiger carcasses after death. Then there's even examples of some chimps and monkeys. They actually bury their dead.
Oh, yeah.
They bury their scat. It's just so when I hear these things in nature that's natural, that we know of, we study, and then you take something that's, allegedly larger and smarter, can move swifter, sure, the trace of it would be really hard. So I don't know. For me, that's a tough subject because I'm a real, I want to see it person,
Yeah, exactly. That's me too. I would love to see it. I would love to, personally witness it and be able to say, and maybe someday I will be at that point, but like you say, there's got to be something to it when you do the research and you look around and try and figure it out. So, and that's part of the fun is, at least for me, is trying to figure out, okay, so if there's this giant, ape in North America, and yet we don't have physical, we have a lot of prints and stuff like that. So what could be causing? It's just kind of fun to try and go through that and try and figure it out.
It really comes down to resources, how much are used, because I watch a lot of documentaries, anywhere from space to animals. And I remember watching a documentary some years ago, and they were trying to find a chipmunk because they thought it to be extinct. And, talking about an animal that's, I don't know, the size of your hand, maybe smaller.
Yeah.
And so they tracked this down. It took months, but they found it. It wasn't extinct. There was a small population of them in Canada. And I'm like, and I remember as a kid, like, well, if they could find that, and there's no doubt they're finding something that's alleged to be 7+ feet tall, 300+ pounds, et cetera, we're finding this thing. But then a friend of mine enlightened me. He's like, look, I know you want to think that way, but they're not throwing major resources at Bigfoot, at a chipmunk for a scientific study because it's obviously it's a political game, right? Like, because they're like, well, something with the environment changed, we did it, and that's why they're extinct. So that's why they go looking for these things. But no one's really motivated to go find. They're not good. Long time ago, do you remember the Spike Channel?
I think so. Yeah,
Spike
I do.
TV. Yeah, I remember a long time ago. They we're going to do some contests with, with millions of dollars involved with it to have teams of people find tangible evidence of Bigfoot. And I was excited for that because I was like, wow, they're going to put that kind of money. That there's going to be people out there that are going to put good resources to finding this thing now. And nothing ever came of it. I never heard of it again. In fact, Spike Channel's not even a thing anymore.
No, it's not. It kind of fell apart.
Yeah.
And then you have some shows, and I don't want to diss anybody but like Finding Bigfoot, and they just kind of did the exact same thing and spent 2 or 3 days in one area, and it was great TV, but it just didn't feel real research kind of a deal, or like you say, throwing the resources needed to find it. Even though it's good TV, it's not plausible.
I personally think those are poor efforts. I think when you're screaming into the woods and banging on trees, I think something like Bigfoot's like, what the hell are these people doing? Would they think we're dumb? We're gonna respond to them? Like if you're talking about an intelligent, very large ape, when you're making noise, you're putting that thing into fight or flight. It's not trying to speak with you. I promise. And
right.
So if people want proof of that, go to a gorilla, go to Africa, go to gorilla, scream at it, see the results.
See what happens. Yeah.
It is not going to be them screaming back trying to communicate, guaranteed.
No.
So yeah, I took issue with those shows. There's some other shows with they're hunting ghosts and they're like taking their shirts off. Like, yeah, you fight me. I'm like, whoa, are you crazy?
Yeah, exactly.
Hypothetically speaking, this thing materializes in front of you. Take a swing at it. You think you're going to knock it out?
Right.
It's insane.
Yep, exactly. And that's the other thing too, I talk to a lot of teams that, actually do research and they go and investigate, and they can go to the same place, 6 times, and finally 6 times they might get some really good evidence, but, they might go one time and not get anything. And so you look at the television shows and, they go once and they get a ton of evidence. So I'm kind of, it just doesn't weigh out right to me, but it does make good television. And one thing, it does make it more open for people to talk about their experiences, which I appreciate, because then I get to collect the stories. So
yeah, I mean, I get it. And, the TV shows, exactly that. They need ratings. And, some of these guys are, I guess they're the chosen one, whatever. But I remember watching those shows a long time ago, and even a long time I was like, these guys are full of shit. I could easily to trick the some of the things they use could be other people and far off in the distance using just radio waves.
Right.
It was not until I stumbled across a story of a guy documenting his paranormal experiences, and this is from the early 2000s, and he wasn't doing it for ratings or view. He was grossly displeased what was going on in his home. And here's the trick, the kicker. He moved and it went with him. That scares me more than anything, because this guy's documenting it, not to put on TV. He wants help. And the form of the church help, to pray over it. And I that's another thing I have a problem with. Like, if you're praying over something, how do you know this entity doesn't predate religion and your words mean little to it? Nothing, in fact. It doesn't recognize your religion.
Yeah. No, I get what you're saying. So you just don't know. It is interesting. And like I said, I've personally known, a lot of groups, and some of them, people contact them because they have a problem and they go in and actually try and help and figure it out, which is great. But again, like some of the television shows, they, somebody's having trouble and they come in and they just rile it up and they yell and scream, like you said, and then they leave. And I equate that to if I had a hornet's problem, a hornet's nest, and I called an exterminator and he just came and threw rocks at it and then charged me and left, that wouldn't be a great exterminator.
Exactly.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, you didn't solve the problem. You came there to address it and then you left it.
Yeah, and you made it worse sometimes and then just left.
Imagine antagonizing something that's only energy, and, you can't handcuff it, you can't shoot it, I said this to a lot of people. If the fear factor for me, and I'm not a very fearful person. I'm what you call stupid brave. I go to a problem. I die in a movie.
Right.
But someone asked me, like, well, how would you deal with a ghost versus an alien? Well, an alien, if they didn't utilize technology, I feel like I could beat one of those up. I'm a pretty strong dude, right? But a ghost, on the other hand, what do you do about that? It could sit in your room, sing the same song all day long, throw your stuff around, and you could do nothing about this, you know? It's not a physical.
Right.
So it's tougher for me. So when I hear about people who authentically have these problems where they're being tormented, I feel for them because it's outside of their capability of dealing with it.
Right. And you try and voice it, and some people are going to look at you like you're a weirdo, and that, oh, sure, you're being tormented by a ghost or by an entity. And I can tell you, it really happens. You know, there's really, you know, issues out there that some people have. Sometimes, you know, when I've been contacted and I'll come in and try and help them at first and look and try and, you know, sometimes there's just a real world issue going on that's causing it with sounds or whatever. But, you know, when it's a real problem and it is a real entity, you know, it takes some help and to figure it out for sure. And sometimes it's a longer process. So
Indeed, especially like for me, I have a pool cue I love. And let's say I pass and I leave that pool cue to family, but somehow it gets sold to another person. And if I am a residual energy, which I imagine I will be, because I'm very nostalgic, I would be I would follow the queue around, and whoever owns it is going to get bothered till it gets back to either a rightful owner or maybe I'll have it buried. No, I'm not going to be buried. But the point is, I'm going to follow my pool cue around. I love that thing. So when you hear about people doing auction or estate sales and auctions, and you buy something that's relic and whatever, maybe there's that percentage where you bought something that something is still around and loves it, and it falls around. You know, I mean, I asked that guy, or a friend of mine that he does investigations. I asked him, I said, does this guy have something that he owns that goes with him? So they can't come to a conclusion on it. That guy's just getting followed, and I feel horrible for him, you know, because he has no love life, you know, his social life. He doesn't sleep at night. He's come undone. And those are some of the stories. I hear a lot of fantastic stories about ghosts, right? And, you know, they're pretty fantastic. But then you hear about this guy. It's just, and it started when he was, I think he was like in his 20s. And his relationship suffered, his job suffered, his school suffered. The guy was going to therapists. They basically gave him a disability. I think they're trying to say he's clinically insane. Oh. But that is not the case. I mean, from what I understand, you know?
Right.
But it's bothersome.
Yeah. And when I interview somebody, you know, people are like, oh, they're just, you know, people just want the attention and stuff. But like the vast majority of people are like, they want to share their story, but they're like, I don't want anybody necessarily to know it's me, or, you know, they're not looking for attention. They're just, what they're looking for a lot of times is somebody who can relate. And that's why I think they feel better about sharing their stories with me, because in a lot of ways I can relate to, you know, their story, even if it's something different than I went through. You know, I'm not judging them, because, you know, it's amazing how many of the interviews I do with people start with, I promise I'm not crazy, or I promise this is, you know, I'm not a loon or something. And because people are just worried about that. So, and some of the more, you know, just out there kind of stories come from everyday normal people that you work with, or, you know, whatever, go to school with, and you wouldn't expect it, but they've had an extraordinary experience.
Yeah. You know, that's another thing too. A lot of the off podcast interviews I do, you know, I gather information for podcasts, and a lot of the people that I've come across so far who had the severe, you know, these entities troubling them, they're very recluse, introverted people. So the ones I've spoken to, they're certainly not looking for attention, because they don't have, like, you know, there's no social page for it. They're not on podcasts. I have to track these people down, and I do it by communicating with some of the paranormal investigators that come across them. So I have to, and I call. It's a really awkward thing for me to call, like, well, I'm just doing some research, and it, you know, it takes them that moment to build trust,
right?
And you could hear some of the stories, and these people are just like, I don't want to be bothered. I mean. And I could sense that, you know, I did get their information through a third party, and that they feel like they're being disturbed. But after speaking to me, they open up a little bit. So I tell them, so I'm not going to share your information, your name, nothing. I'm compiling information to make comparisons to the different hauntings and events, you know, across the country. So eventually when I go out to do a documentary, or I go out to document on my own, I have a pool of information to select from. And it just seems to be that the majority of them are they just don't want to be bothered. And I respect that. So I don't know. It's tough. It's really tough.
It is. It is. Well, and one thing that I found too, especially when I started writing my books, there has been a couple different instances where I interviewed somebody, I got their story, and it is kind of a strange, out there, odd story, something you wouldn't necessarily hear, and I write it, publish the book with that story in it, and then somebody will read it and they'll contact me and they'll be like, I thought I was the only one that had that experience. And I'll give you an example. I wrote a story about a young boy. When he was young, they used to camp a lot with his family, and all of his family, extended family, would go. And him and his cousins were playing hide and seek. He was the one that was seeking, and he noticed his cousin, an older cousin that he looked up to, was out of camp and trying to motion for him to follow him. And so he would go to where his cousin was, and then the cousin would be further up the mountain, trying to get him to follow him up. And he did this a couple times, and finally he was a long ways from camp. And he's like, we're not supposed to be this far from camp. And so he got, started back to camp, got a weird feeling, ran back to camp because he was scared. But when he got back to camp, found out that this cousin that he'd been following had actually been in camp the entire time. His mom was like, no, he's been here with me at the fire the entire time. And so whatever this entity or creature or whatever it was mimicking his cousin to try and lure him out into the mountains. So I wrote that story and I put it in one of my books, and I just got inundated with people saying, I had an experience with where something mimicking an older cousin or an older sibling or, somebody that I trusted was trying to lure me either into the woods or into an abandoned building or, several different things like that. And one that a lady contacted me and said she had the exact same experience right near where the original story had happened in the canyon, where something pretending to be her older cousin was trying to lure her up the canyon as well. And so it went from one story to being something that happens, all over the country. That's really kind of strange and weird. So, but I find that fascinating because, all of a sudden it starts giving, credibility to the original story and all of these other stories. And these people wouldn't have come forward if they hadn't read that somebody else had a very same, situation happen.
It's sad to say, victims of any crime are the same way. It's really, so most people I always do this, but I try to compare things. When people say, well, how come you didn't tell anyone else about your ghost story? Like, well, it's like victims of crimes. They don't talk about it until they find a comfortable space to speak of it, or someone relatable, they can approach. Listen, the people out there, even the regression UFO stories, and I find the people that scream the loudest and have the most pushback are alpha people in positions of power where they're not used to being helpless. And now imagine an entity like we were discussing earlier. It's in your house or it's luring you away, and your defense to it is close your eyes. That's the best you could do. So of course these people don't want to speak about it. They don't want, forget the ridicule. It's like, imagine reliving an abuser the rest of your life. You have to come to terms with it every day and see it every day. It's horrible. So I don't know. That's the field of paranormal when it comes to aggressive entities. My heart's out to them because it's just not on that subject. Like the noisy ghost, the poltergeist. Those trouble me a lot. What experiences have you come across with poltergeist?
So the word poltergeist is actually German for noisy ghost.
Yeah.
And so, a lot of times you can have all different kinds of hauntings in a house, whether it's residual, something that just happens over and over again, regardless of somebody that's there, or objects moving. And that's more of the poltergeist kind of a thing. things being very, moved around a lot. And I've had several stories of that. One in particular, there was a woman who she loved to decorate with antiques. And when she got her new house, she went and bought, this really old bag that had tools in it. And it ended up having a ghost attached to it. Come to find out, she didn't know at the time that it was actually an old cobbler's tools. And she had things, the tools continued to move all the time on her, and which is, a lot to do with poltergeist kind of thing. And eventually, she had a baby, and the baby would wake up and start crying. And she was trying to do that thing where you let them cry for a little bit to see if they can soothe themselves to sleep. And somebody started singing a German lullaby she could hear over the baby monitor. And she ran into the room, and there's nobody there. And it took them a little while to figure out that it was actually from the tools that this, I guess, poltergeist had come in. And when they got rid of the tools, it all left again. But another interesting thing with that as well, I had somebody approach me not long ago, and he said, we live in a new house that we don't have any old things, but all of a sudden, things are starting to move. I've seen things move. And it's really kind of strange. And I looked at him and I said, how many teenage daughters do you have? And he kind of looked shocked, and he goes, I actually have, two that just, one that's a teenager and one that just became a teenager. And I said, you would be really surprised how many times especially with a female that's becoming a teenager around that age, there will be a time when all of a sudden there's a weird energy in the house that can actually move things that people attribute to a ghost. But it has something to do with the energy around these teenagers when they're turning into teenagers. And that happens a lot. And then it just goes away. And after a couple months, I kept in contact with him, and he said, yeah, it just finally dissipated. But it did kind of seem to emanate around my two teenage daughters for a long time. So I find that really kind of a fascinating thing too. It's almost like it's not an entity, or it is that's using some sort of energy from the girls. It can happen with boys too, but it just seems to be more prevalent with girls for some reason that are just becoming teenagers.
Yeah, my sister Nicole had night terrors when she was a teenager, in her preteens and teens. Yeah. Like she said something would terrorize her. I always thought she was just having bad dreams. That's what I always thought. But when I hear that, I'm like, oh, maybe that explains that. Because, I never heard about the night terror, any of that from her ever again after that. It is right around that time. She was a teen, preteen and teen.
Yep. It's interesting how there's weird energy around, here's another reason not to have teenagers, right? But that weird energy that's around teenagers at that time. And for some reason it has a lot to do with girls sometimes. I'm not sure why, but and then you go into the whole thing with folklore and stuff. You wonder if that's not how some of this folklore around claiming people are witches and stuff happened, or something, how it's all connected. We talked about how it could all be connected. So
yeah, you imagine a time where like, well, if you're not a witch, we're going to find out. I'm going to put this concrete on your feet, throw you in that lake. Yeah. And if you come up, you're a witch, and we're going to kill you. But if you drown, you're a person, and so be it. What a weird test.
That's the worst test ever, right?
Nope, no plus column there.
No.
There's a one person about poltergeist I'd spoken to some months ago, and I laughed, and I didn't mean to, right? It was a woman from New Jersey, and her husband have been bothered by, I guess, a poltergeist their whole lives. But this one would just turn the lights on and off, bang cabinets, turn the music on. And these poor people, after having priests there, a shaman, you know what they did? They got earmuffs for silence, and they put a mask over their face, like a sleep mask.
Oh, really?
And I didn't mean to, because it's the way she said it, because we just put a mask and earmuffs on, and that's that. I was like, what? It became, and so it never slowed down, though. You'd think that the ghost wasn't getting attention. It never slowed down. So maybe it's just that thing's routine,
Yeah.
Crazy.
And the funny thing about that is what I've learned through the years of interviewing people, like an entity can be connected to, yeah, at least in my opinion, to a place like a house, a thing like an object, or a person themselves, or even the land itself. It's interesting, the different things that can connect, people the same way, everyday people have, connections to different things, whether it's people or I had a story in one of my books where a gentleman, his wife had died, and then he remarried, and after he remarried, his first wife was terrorizing his new wife, pulling her hair and throwing her things, and it was all directed at her. And at first they weren't sure, but then she explained the woman in the mirror that had scared her, and he's like, well, that's my first wife. And they ended up having to move and do the priest thing, and but moving, because it was still the house that he had built with the first wife. They eventually had to move to get away from it. But it's really interesting. The first wife was extremely unhappy that he had remarried.
Yeah, I mean, what do you do? I mean, that's a nightmare in itself. That's personal.
Yeah, it is. It really is. And it's kind of crazy.
Yeah, I mean, what do you do about it? You reason with her?
Yeah, you try and reason with her, right?
You bring a priest in, and she's what if she's Jewish?
Yeah.
That would bother me, I think, because then you don't have privacy. When it's personal like that, they're in your face all day, no matter what you do.
Right.
I don't know.
There was a lot of anger involved in that one for sure. So
yeah, I mean, that's when you wish that they actually had a proton pack, right?
Yeah. Yep. Exactly.
God, if those were real.
Yeah.
So let's get into your book series. You released a new one. Let's start with talking about the first one.
So my first two really came from where I live in northern Utah. The whole series is called Stranger Bridgerland, and the name Bridgerland comes from the northern part of Utah and part of Wyoming and the southern part of Idaho in the corner has the unofficial term of Bridgerland, because there was a mountain man and trapper named Jim Bridger. If you remember that movie with Leonardo DiCaprio, when he was a trapper in that, and they kill his son and he hunts the guys down. The younger guy in that movie, the one where he got really tore up by the bear.
Yeah.
The Revenant.
Yeah, I remember that.
So the young guy in that story, it's based on a true story, and the young guy in that is named Jim Bridger. He was, originally part of that group, but later on he came further west, and discovered northern Utah. Really kind of was the first trapper here, and helped kind of write papers for people to come to this area and settle it. So they call it Bridgerland. So I called it, because my first few books are about northern Utah and Idaho, that part, I called it Bridgerland. So my first couple books are mostly those stories that I collected for years and years. And those were all like old school, in a way that, I would hear a story and I would have to try and track down, like you were talking about, track down the person that it actually happened to, and, get permission. And this was, back before the internet and all that stuff that I had to hunt them down. And so my first couple books are in northern Utah and part of Idaho and Wyoming and a little bit in Nevada. And as those books came out, I've had more and more people, come to me. It's very nice with the internet now and having a website, and people can contact me through my website. And as I've gone, the stories have just gotten further and further away. To my last few books have gone all the way to Canada. I have a story in my newest book about a small lake in Canada where a young man and his dad, when he was a teenager, he's older now, saw a dog man while fishing up in Canada, and were scared to death by that. And a few stories even into Mexico, which has been great, because I like the stories out of Mexico, because it seems stories seem to change along cultural lines and what they feel is important, and their stories. And so it's just been great to get stories from all across the United States, all the way from, California to New York and all the way through, and just to hear people's paranormal stories from all over. It's been great.
Do you plan eventually to go out and document, like do some film documenting paranormal?
I would love to do that. Eventually, I would really love to do that. Right now, I do my books and I speak a lot. If it's somewhere close enough, I will go, and just so I can experience the area of where the story was and get the feel for it. And, I do a lot of my interviews, obviously, over, Skype or Zoom, because it's across the country. But if it's close enough, I like to be in the same room with the person when I get the interview. But, yeah, I would love to do that someday. Just document some of the stories. When I do my release, I don't pay for stories, but I give people a free copy of the book when it comes out that the thing is in. But I get releases so that I can use the stories either, in book form or whatever form, I may use later on. So I'm always open to all different kinds of things like that.
I don't think ghosts like me. I'll tell you why. I went to a location that was renowned, right? Because I live in Florida and it wasn't impossible to get to. It's renowned. It's guaranteed nightly, what they told me. I go there, nothing.
No.
Other people, and I start to figure it out. It's me. They're like, here he comes. That guy's a pain in the ass. I'll ask a lot of questions. Just wait till he goes. That's what I think, because it's crazy.
Yeah.
Like, I saw one blue orb, aqua colored, during a thunderstorm here in Florida. And the only reason it stood out to me is because it was very, aqua blue. And it would appear to me, the best of my judgment, wasn't very high up in the sky. It didn't move or do anything. It just got consumed by the clouds. And so I never knew what that was. So
yeah,
that could have been at that time, I was living very near an airport. But then, wouldn't stay in that same spot for an elongated amount of time. But that's it. That's the closest I got.
Yeah.
So I'm going to eventually get out and do it. I've been wanting to do a documentary and travel the country for a while. I came to a reality check around June. I was like, I don't have enough data. I have been networking with people like you and other people on the show, so I could have a friendly face to call and do the podcast on the road and document while I do it. But I got to really responsibly sit down and make a map and figure out a start point and an end point.
Right.
I did.
Yeah, and I've got a list of my places that, whether I want to document it or, video it or just go to it. I have a long list of places that I would just love to visit because of the paranormal.
Yeah, because for every stop I do, I'm trying to coordinate it this way. Every stop is going to be have something paranormal, ufology, Bigfoot, so long as it has multiple topics in one location for every stop. That would be the idea, right? Right. And I'm gonna have to figure out a team to bring with me because that was something else I didn't consider. I'm gonna go do this by myself? No way. I need a team. I need somebody that knows what they're doing, especially with Bigfoot. I'll get killed. I'm crazy. I'll run right to it, grab it, because there's no way I see a Bigfoot and I'm not getting some kind of proof. There's no way. Right. I'm not strong enough to take it down, but more than likely I'm gonna run it and grab hair. I don't care what it takes. I'm gonna document.
Get a handful of hair from it.
Yeah. I'm not one of these people who are going to, fall frozen upon sight. I got to know, because the worst part for me is going home saying, well, I can't believe I didn't get proof. And it was right there, I'm like an alien. I have to negotiate one of these things. Like, look, probe whatever you want to do, but we got to have a conversation. What do I get out of this, And the ghost, right. I don't know. That's the toughest one, the ghost.
Yeah.
Because
it is.
I think some people have software that other people don't. You know what I mean? Like our brain, our computer. I think some people have software. I lack software. I really think that.
I do think some people are definitely seem closer to it or somehow on a different frequency that can interact with them. I don't know. Some people, all the experiences I've had, they say you must be psychic or something like that. And I don't know if I'm psychic, but I definitely seem to, have interactions with ghosts. So
yeah, I mean, there's another guy that came on the show a couple times. Will come on again, David Olsen, another Olsen. He's in Chicago. He's a cop, and he investigates the paranormal, and he has, and him and his team, they do really well. They come across sites, they see things, and here in Florida, I had a friend of mine years ago. His house, another place, like known to be haunted. Everyone I've ever known in childhood that went there said they had an event. I went and stayed the night in his house. No, not very responsibly. We were drinking beer and hanging out, but I stayed up all night and nothing. And the next day, I wake up and everyone's like, "Oh, it freaks me out." And these aren't like bullshitter guys. These are big dudes who aren't really afraid of shit, man. But I saw nothing. I remember being so disappointed. And I was like, did I blink? Did I fall asleep? And then the reality currently now, as the podcast goes, I don't have the software, or they don't like me.
Something like that, right?
You know, it feels very personal.
Yeah, it's funny. A lot of people that I interview in their stories, it's funny how they'll be just living their life, and it's an everyday normal day, and then all of a sudden it's like they step into the twilight zone and this strange occurrence happens. They're not looking for it, they're not expecting it, and it just pops up right there in their face. So
yeah, you know, at the end of the day, it's me questioning my mortality. You know, that's why we all question the mysterious, because we need it serves more purpose to us. That's why we invent religions and gods and crazy rules that people still abide by, that were created in times that it's insane. Some of the things we fall into order with, you know. So
right.
I understand all of this. This is what we do. But for me, when you're questioning mortality and you're questioning the unknown, it's because you really want to feel like there's something more than this, that you didn't just live a life for zero reason. And
right.
Here's me, this guy, and I have relatives who, you know, they've had encounters, or there were psychic things going on, and I just never saw anything. And you know, you take the word of some people on, you know, because you trust them, and there's sometimes occasion where someone will say something, and it's obviously something they should know, but they know it, but then how do I know they're not a mentalist and figure it out? So I'm a pretty smart guy. I could meet someone in the pool hall, evaluate them, and kind of get a good feel of who they are and what they do. And I'm not psychic at all, you know?
Yeah, right. Exactly. And there's, you know, it's funny. You talk about that, but we're here after, you know, millions and millions of years of evolution. And there's got to be things other than, you know, sight, you know, sound, touch, taste, that our body uses, because you're not alone. There's people that you meet somebody and you almost automatically know, I can trust this person or I can't trust this person. Right. You know what I mean? There's something that makes your spider sense tingle, and you're like, I don't trust this person as far as I can throw them.
Yeah, that's because you know, in our evolution, we used to run from predators. So we could almost recognize who's a predator versus who's not. And that's not always the case, because there's so many serial killers. When you look at them, like, there's no way that guy was a serial killer. But he was. Right. You know?
He was. Yeah.
He ate him.
Yeah.
But, you know, it's tough for me. Look, I'm not a non-believer. After all the evidence I'm seeing, and some of the videos I've got to watch, and now I've gone through a lot of videos. Mm-hmm. I'm pretty good about calling out bullshit. But there was one that freaked me out, because I ran through the computer, I ran through the software. I can't explain it. It cast a shadow, which creeped me out more. Out of all these videos, this thing, somewhat translucent, cast a shadow. That grabbed my attention really quick. Right. And then the thing that bothers me is I listen to people's voices in these videos. I look for because I don't care how tough you are or unafraid or how desensitized you are. When you have an encounter, you're going to dump some dopamine. You're going to have a chemical response. You know, your adrenaline's going to get up. The pitch of your voice is going to alter. You know, things about you change. I look for those little signatures. And this guy had all the hallmarks. And the video he was making was him working on a project in a house. He wasn't looking for a ghost. He was going to and from electrical outlets. This is daylight. He's doing this. And when I saw that thing, it took me back. It freaked me out. I'd never want to, if I go into the field to investigate, John, I never want to see that.
Right.
And I'm not a fearful person, you know? So,
yeah.
Because it was menacing the way it was. I don't know. So,
and like you say, you can watch some videos and you just kind of get a feeling that, you know, something's not right. Like they'll pan to something just a second before it moves. And you're like, there was no reason to look at that object unless it was going to move, kind of a deal. But then there's also, like you talk about, this guy just doing his everyday kind of work thing. And then all of a sudden all heck breaks loose. And you're like, I don't know how that could be fake. I'm not sure how that.
And by the way, in that video, he didn't see the entity. He didn't see it. He didn't see it till post when he was looking back at the video. What freaked him out is that the cabinets opened when he came back in. That freaked, and he was, and you could tell this guy's not into ghosts because he's like, nope, and walked right out the door. You know, you could sense it, and he didn't even know the entity was in the hallway till he checked the video later, and he had no clue. And that to me, because you could see in his eyes too, because he recorded himself. You could see his pupils are dilated. You could see his flush in the face. His breathing was accelerated. You could tell he had adrenaline dump. It was not fake at all. Versus the video I watched where there's some girl and her guy are in a hotel, and they go in there and they open, because it's known to be haunted, and they wanted the experience, you know, to be fair. And they walk in there and they open the closet doors. Everything's, their belongings there just as it should be. And she pans the camera to a dark hallway and then goes to the closet and everything's in disarray and she's freaked out. But I caught the moment where she edited it.
Right.
I have the eye for that. I saw it. And so if you run it through your computer and you run it by second, you can see there was a break in recording and then picked up right where it was because it wasn't pointing exactly where she left off. And I caught it. And you know, look, but call it entertainment. I'm cool with that. It's fun to be scary and it's fun to make scary entertainment. We go to movies for it all the time.
Right.
But don't pass it off as real. It's unfair to people that are doing the real due diligence and the work.
That's exactly true. And that's the big thing too with that I have with Bigfoot in general. Like if somebody comes out with something, you know, you got to be able to scrutinize it. And if it ends up being fake, it just really angers. I don't know why it really angers me, because I want to have real proof. And if you're out there faking things, it just irritates me to no end. And like you say, if you wanted to say, oh, look, I made this, it's fake, you know, and look how fun it is, that's different for sure.
Yeah, I mean, a prime example is the Blair Witch, the original one. We went to the movies. We knew full well that was horse shit. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But we went.
It was still fun to watch.
Yeah,
you know?
we went. It was exciting, and it gave you that element of fear from that point of view where it could be real, and we enjoyed it. That's okay. Right. But don't try to pass it off as science, because that's where, and that's why you get scientists that they like railroad investigators like you and other people who legit go out there and look and legitimately had experiences. You get bundled to this group of people because there's people that do this shit, and it's unfair.
Yeah. Yep. Exactly. And it does, it degrades those people who are working hard to, you know, get real evidence and stuff like that. And the way it is, I mean, anybody with a computer can do a certain amount of FX now, and like you say, edit stuff to make it look a certain way. So you really got to be careful. Like I'm like you, I do a lot of research. I watch a lot of videos, and then if there's something that sticks out, I'll try and, you know, look further into it to find out, you know, what's going on. So it can be irritating with the fakes for sure.
With computer technology, it's really hard to discern the difference between reality or not now. Like there's a video game called Valhalla, right? It's Assassin's Creed. I played this game, and when you're immersed into it, the ray tracking, meaning like the sun and the clouds and the rain, I'm not saying it's perfect, but damn, it's getting close.
Yeah, you know? It really is. I agree. And
in some point in time, if that, when you make like UFO or like ghost videos, and you have someone who's really like, you got to keep in mind, these video games are made for consoles, and not everyone's got the same quality TV, et cetera, et cetera. So they make it loosely based upon that technology. But there's CGI experts out there. And when I say experts, they're not the movie guys. These are people that hone this as their hobby. They'll fool you. They'll get you. And there's been some videos that I was taking on, and if it weren't for the help of a friend and then really scrutinizing it, it would have got me. And so the frustrating part is you get excited, like finally there's some proof of something, and then you find out it's nonsense. What I did when I was a kid, I don't know if you remember this, but when I was a kid, a video, it was a found video thing with this family, and the aliens invaded.
I do remember that. Yeah.
And so it was like a VHS found video, and I remember when I was a kid watching it, and I wasn't even freaked out. I was excited, like, wow, they're real. I remember being like excited about it. It's real. Yeah. And then you find out it's horseshit. And you're like, well, I guess I'll go skateboarding.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I do remember that. That's funny.
Yeah, that mystery gave you that thirst for it. But what happens is, because it was so publicly shamed, what maybe would have been a really strong investigator in me a long time ago, I went elsewhere. I took my eyes off the ball. I was done. That's when I was done. I went and shot pool, hung out with friends. It wasn't until 2017 when they released videos from the government where I was like, whoa, wait a minute. We're on to something here, because you can't dispute that, you know? You have a fighter pilot where there's an object clearly outmaneuvering him, and then it takes off in a split moment. In less than a second is at the cap point. Now there's tangible evidence for me in my eyes. So, you know, reignited that interest. But for you and for the other investigators, man, that's where it gets bad, man. Because people, when you make fakes, it hurts your work, you know?
Yeah. And you know, I equate it a lot to, if you remember this show, I think it was in the 90s. Fox did a show where they had a magician that came on and they showed you the trick.
Oh yeah, the mask guy.
Yeah. I watched like one episode and I walked away from it just sick to my stomach, because I just hated the idea that, you know, you as a kid, you really want magic to be real and everything. And it just wasn't fun to have the curtain pulled back, if that makes sense. Not that UFOs and ghosts aren't real.
Right. But I see the allure of it's gone.
Right. Exactly. It's just different that way. We all want answers, of course, and everything like that. We just don't, when people fake or you get excited about something and you're like you said, oh, this is real, tangible, you know, this looks real. And then you find out, oh, it's somebody faked it. It's the same kind of feeling of just feeling disappointed.
Yeah, it's upsetting. Like that, a good example is that magician. Like, he was masked, and I know why now. He got legit death threats.
Oh yeah,
he put a lot of people out of business. So
he did, yeah. And he that was the thing, is like, that's like mafia level stuff, that he was ruining people's livelihood there. So,
well, you know, I remember remember David Blaine, the levitating thing.
Mm-hmm.
That was, to me, that was pretty awesome until they exposed it. It's like, shit.
Yeah.
That's another case where you, like, the way his demeanor was, it made you want to believe. Mm-hmm. And these acts and the reactions of the people on the street, until you find out the majority of the people on the street, they're either themselves being fooled by an illusion, or the majority of them are involved in it, and they're directing the attention to something other than where the trick is. I never knew that. Like, like a lot of these magicians you see in these, like America's Got Talent. I love that show. Mm-hmm. But because of certain shows in the past, I learned the cues to look for. And most of the people in the audience are in on it with these people that are quote unquote psychics and magicians.
Yeah.
And so, the magic's gone. And so for investigating the paranormal and ufology and Bigfoot, for people who do the fakes, and they do good ones, you're damaging the people that are doing the work. You really are. It's unfair to them. There's people that it's their life's work to prove it. You know, like, they've had an experience that they need explained, and they want to serve up the truth. You're diminishing their ability to do that, and that's sad.
It really is. Yeah, it really is sad, and it's kind of, it feels like they're trying, and you know, they're doing it in a way they also want to get the recognition and everything like that. And to be honest, I was telling somebody this, you know, with all the fakes and all the people that are attacked because of the fakes, if I was out and got real, honest to goodness, great video of, say, a Sasquatch, I'm not going to come home because of everything I've seen and just automatically upload it onto YouTube. I'm going to go to the people that I know that are actual, you know,
experts,
experts, and show them in private and everything, and get all the backing or whatever before I ever, you know, came out and showed it, just because if it was good and I know it's real, the first thing people are going to do, because of all the fakers, are going to be like, oh, that's fake. That's too good to be true. That's all, you know, and it just, the ridicule would be horrible.
Well, that's what you need. You need a proper chain of custody.
Yeah.
You know,
Exactly.
That's exactly why I was talking about earlier, why I put the brakes on the documentary. Cause I'm like, granted, how honest I might be or not be, or whatever it may be, it's not good enough. I need a team. I need people there, because the chain of custody has got to be undamaged. And even if you, John, go out and you get footage of Bigfoot, like you're 3 meters away, you're looking him in the eye, you're getting detail, it's perfect. People are going to still say that's horseshit.
Yeah.
Because the fakes were so good and there's so many that you've damaged people's ability to have faith. It's been destroyed. So, and I know this because it's happened to me. It happened to me. Thank God for Robert Spearing, the guy from MUFON. I saw some of his videos. And he was good enough to explain the difference between the real ones and the fake ones. And I'm going to tell you, the fake ones are pretty convincing. More so than the real ones. And that's the problem. And so you get taken back. And that's why I'm hopeful. When I do a documentary, at the end of the day, I want everyone listening and whoever watches to understand one thing. I'm looking for the answer for me first. Yeah. Whatever you guys get to see, great. But for me, I'm questioning my mortality. I'm satisfying my childhood curiosity first. So I don't care about likes. I don't care who's going to jump on board. I don't need I'm not looking to make millions of dollars. I just want to know. And then I'll rest at ease. I really will. The podcast probably take a different turn. Maybe I'll get into politics.
There you go. The only thing that's probably more cutthroat than the paranormal world would be politics. So
worry about fakes in the paranormal world. That's all fakes. So
yeah, exactly.
John, before we close, tell people about your where they could find your website, your book names, because I'll put it in the description as well. But just explain it to them anyway.
Yeah. So all of my books can be found on Amazon. You can get softback or Kindle version. There's 6 of them. I won't name them all, but they're under the Stranger Bridgerland book series. My new one that came out last week, I was really happy. It actually debuted at number 2 on Amazon for the new releases for Paranormal and UFO, which was awesome. I was so excited about that. And so you can find them all on there. You can contact me or find out more information on strangerbridgerland.com or Beyond Stranger Bridgerland on Facebook. You can contact me. And there's also a list on my website of all the different places that, my Twitter and all that fun stuff as well. So that's the best way to contact me and find my books on Amazon.
Excellent. John, it's been a pleasure. I've enjoyed talking to you. I know we're going to do it again. Yeah. So for those of you listening, we're going to say good night, good day, or whatever it is for you. And I'm going to talk to John in post.